Sudan has been at war with itself since April 2023. The background of the current conflict dates to September 2021, when a group of army officers attempted a coup against civilian government. The coup failed and 40 military officers were arrested. However, within a month, the civilian government, which was headed by Prime Minister Hamdok, was toppled in another coup headed by General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan in October. General Abdel al-Burhan immediately declared emergency and took office as de facto head of state. In November 2021, Hamdok was reinstated as prime minister, and an agreement was signed with the military. Within 2 months, Prime Minister Hamdok resigned after violent protests against the coup, and the real power remained with al-Burhan. In April 2023, internationally brokered plan for transition to civilian rule was discussed, and this led to power struggles between Sudanese armed forces, the SAF, led by al-Burhan, and his deputy, Hemeti, head of the heavily armed paramilitary, the Rapid Support Forces, RSF. Soon, this conflict turned into civil war with battles being fought in the streets of capital Khartoum. Since the start of the war, it is alleged that 150,000 civilians have died so far, and more than 10 million have been displaced. Since the start of the conflict, there has been intense fighting between SAF and RSF. Due to this, the SAF has relocated from Khartoum to Port Sudan. The RSF is based in western Sudan. It is mainly composed of recruits from the Janjaweed tribe in Darfur and nearby regions in Chad, Libya, and South Sudan. The stability of Sudan is important to international community, as it has an 800-kilometer coast along the Red Sea, from where 1/6 of the world trade passes. Instability in Sudan is huge risk for trade between Asia, Europe, and Africa. The international organizations like the United Nations and African Union have been powerless. Big powers like the United States are more focused on Ukraine, Gaza, and China, and has paid little attention to the conflict in Sudan. Sudanese civil war is also part of international chess, with foreign powers supporting their favorite contenders, and there have been countries who have taken sides in this battle to further their own ends. This emphasizes Sudan's geopolitical importance. United Arab Emirates is one of the biggest players in Sudan. UAE in recent times has invested commercial ventures from mining to agriculture. Emiratis have bought tens of thousands of hectares of farmland in Sudan. UAE has also built logistics for export of the produce. UAE harbors feeling that in order to safeguard its investments, it must have somebody sensitive to its interests at helm in Sudan. UAE has built a network of military bases in Chad, Egypt, Eritrea, Libya, and Somalia. In recent times, it has trained 8 African armies. In Sudanese conflict, it supports the paramilitary RSF. This support is an extension of the personal relationships developed by UAE in recent times. Hemeti, the leader of RSF, had earlier deployed its forces in Yemen on behalf of UAE and Saudi Arabia. It also fought in Libya for a warlord backed by UAE. The RSF's business network of smuggling arms and gold is managed by an advisor based in UAE. The supply lines for the RSF runs through other satellite states of UAE in the region like Chad, Libya, and South Sudan. In December and January 2024, Hemeti had traveled to neighboring countries on a plane registered in UAE. The Ethiopian Prime Minister, a client state of UAE, had given an especially warm welcome to him. When the war started, a Russian private mercenary group, Wagner, which operates in Europe and Africa, had supplied surface-to-air missiles to RSF. Wagner Group is also fighting against Ukraine in the Russo-Ukraine War. This participation of Wagner in Sudan reportedly led a covert military action by Ukrainian special forces against RSF. However, recently Russia is appearing to shift its approach, as SAF has allowed an outpost to Russia in Port Sudan. Sudan's neighbor Egypt has supported the regular military, the SAF, by supplying it with Turkish drones. However, UAE's promise to Egypt for investment of $35 billion in February 2024 might sway its future support to SAF. Turkish arms companies have also been supplying small weapons to SAF. After the RSF had looted the Sudanese central bank, another oil-rich Arab country, Qatar had allegedly deposited $1 billion in Sudanese central bank in order to bolster its currency. Qatar has also signed a deal with SAF for trade in gold as a competitor of UAE. Currently, more than 90% of the gold export from Sudan lands up in UAE. The SAF has had limited support from its ally Saudi Arabia, which tried hosting peace talks without much success. In order to find support, it has befriended Iran. In July 2024, diplomatic relations with Iran that were severed in 2016 were re-established. Iran has also sought a naval base on the coast of Sudan, which so far has not been agreed to by SAF. However, there is no guarantee of SAF's actions if the situation becomes desperate for it. The current war in Sudan could also destabilize its neighbors with whom Sudan has long-standing disputes like those in the Tigray region of Ethiopia. Also, its neighbor Eritrea is currently training SAF fighters and may get involved directly if the RSF overruns the country. The war has also created hurdles in supply of oil from oil fields of South Sudan, which are transported to Port Sudan via oil pipelines. The elongated war in Sudan has led to innumerable suffering to the people of Sudan. Many have fled the country. According to report, 60% of the refugees waiting at Calais refugee camp in France are Sudanese, and they want to migrate to England. Apart from those fleeing towards Europe, millions are staying in overcrowded refugee camps within Sudan and in its neighboring countries. It is stated that around 2 million people will die from hunger and related diseases by the end of 2024. The health facilities are practically non-existent. Apart from above, the human suffering of torn families and dead loved ones has no calculable cost. The war also threatens the wider world. The American intelligence agencies have recently raised an alarm that Sudan, that once hosted Osama bin Laden in the 1990s, could once again become hotbed of Islamic extremism. It is also reported that the RSF is building connections with Houthi rebels of Yemen and Al-Shabaab terrorist group of Somalia. Additionally, there is a threat to vital sea trade routes through the Red Sea. In the last couple of years, the Houthi rebels in Yemen have attacked cargo ships. Instability in Sudan would further deteriorate the security situation for cargo ships in the Red Sea. As is often the case in conflict, some individuals have found ways to profit from the war. With the destruction of the Coca-Cola bottling factory in Khartoum, Kinsa, a drink similar to Coca-Cola, has become widely available. This beverage is produced in Saudi Arabia, and a trader in Port Sudan has secured a contract to import it, filling the gap left by the factory's closure. Meanwhile, local manufacturers have relocated their production to Egypt and India to sustain their businesses. Middlemen are capitalizing on the chaos, skillfully navigating checkpoints and front lines to make substantial profits. Sudan's exports to Saudi Arabia in 2024 have surged by 77% compared to 2023, and the South Sudan Chamber of Commerce has reported a notable increase in cross-border trade with Sudan. Many combatants have essentially become involved in smuggling operations, with factions associated with the SAF trafficking oil and those linked to the RSF smuggling gold. While the majority of the population faces the threat of starvation, mobile banking is thriving, and some Sudanese companies are utilizing satellite technology to keep people connected. Despite these developments, it is crucial for the international community to prioritize resolving the crises in Sudan to alleviate the suffering of its people. Achieving peace is essential not only for the well-being of Sudan, but also for the economic stability of Africa, Europe, and Asia as a whole,